Larry, we good? Okay, well, thank you all for coming. Sorry we are a little late in starting. We don't usually start late, but we had a number of different nonprofits speaking to us tonight. I want to thank everybody. I hope everybody had a great holiday. I'm not sure if there are any Gonzaga fans or Baylor fans, but hopefully we'll get you out in time for the game tonight. If anybody stayed up for the Saturday night game, that's why they play the games. It was absolutely a fantastic game, and unfortunately somebody had to lose. We start our well, I guess, do I have to read this thing anymore? Hold on, I have to read this. This meeting is being held in person at the Huntersville Recreation Center, located at 11836 Verhoff Drive, Huntersville, North Carolina. Virtually via live stream on our Facebook page. The public has been invited to attend and comment during public comments or during any public hearings. 1, in person at the Huntersville Rec Center on Verhoff Drive, or 2, by telephonic communication accordance with the instructions sent to persons who have registered with the town clerk no later than 3 p.m. Today. The public may also submit comments by email to the town clerk. Emailed comments received no later than 3 p.m. on April 5th, 2021 will be included on the record, in the record of this meeting. The town clerk can be reached jpierson@huntersville.org. We start our meetings with a moment of silence, so please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I don't have too many comments today. The one meeting that I had, I guess about 2 weeks ago for the Metropolitan Transit Commission, a lot of discussion on the Silver Line, and that's the line going from potentially Union County all the way to Gaston County. Also, we talked about the out-of-county bus service. So there are actually 3 communities that the CAT system supplies buses to. And you all may be shocked to find out that we supplement those communities to the tune of about 50% of the ongoing cost. And I've stated for the last few years, I didn't think that was fair. I think they should pay 100% of the cost. So we're going to have further discussions and potentially renegotiate the terms of those agreements. That's really about all I have. And as I stated earlier, if you've signed up for the public hearing, that'll be later on in the meeting. There's public comments that'll be up front in the meeting as well. So with that, Commissioner Bales.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to welcome all of you. It's wonderful to see people at our meetings again and being together. I hope everyone had a wonderful Easter holiday and Passover. I know I did. It was wonderful to be with family. With my EDC report, I will share with the board that we are continuing to move in the right direction in regards to business. We've had several grand openings as of late. I know several of you have participated in those, and our community truly is rocking and rolling right now in that regard. You wouldn't think COVID existed. The EDC is currently working 31 projects for the 3 towns, and 21 of those projects are right here in Huntersville. So we continue to move those forward, and I look forward to bringing additional announcements in the future. And with that, Mr. Mayor, back to you.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Bloom.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you for coming out tonight. From the Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce, Wednesday, April 14th, from 12 to 6 p.m., Cool Kids Clubhouse will be having an open house. Cool Kids is located at 9601 Holly Point Drive in Huntersville. Please stop and learn more about the amazing mission to improve the lives of children who have cancer, and it's a great organization. On April 16th, from 8:30 to 10 a.m., the Chamber will be hosting a virtual and in-person Focus Friday. The speaker will be Dr. Mandy Cohan, and she is the Secretary of North Carolina Department of Health and Human Resources. For public safety, I would like to personally thank all those first responders for doing the job that they do for us. For the Huntersville Fire Department, they are reporting a reminder that the Duke Energy nuclear siren test will be on the 14th of April at 11:55 to noon. From the Huntersville Police Department. Bobby, do you have that? Okay, this picture was taken on April 2nd. This is the first time ever that Huntersville had half of the night shift was made up of female officers. Lieutenant Sprague, Sergeant Saglamenti, K-9 Officer Lowe, and that's Coda is the name of the dog, and Officers Long and Kobita. They're doing a great job. And Chief, I thought I saw you in the back, and thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Excuse me, was this before they went out, or were they all patrolling around the caboose?
I don't know, but the caboose is pretty safe. Again, great job. And if anybody in the audience knows anyone who would like to transfer in or get into law enforcement, please see somebody or call the Huntersville Police Department. And that's all of my report, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Hines?
Thank you. Glad to see everybody here. So the last CRTPO meeting, if you don't know what CRTPO is, Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization. Basically, when all the money is dropped down from the federal government to state government, it goes to the MPO, which is Metropolitan Planning Organization, which consists in our area, Mecklenburg County, Iredell County, and Union County. And we set priorities for road projects and those kind of things. So we had an education session this past our last meeting, and one of the things I want to keep on your radar, and I mentioned this before, is with the funding, lack of funding and projects going up significantly in cost in the state of North Carolina, one of the things that they're continuing to talk about is vehicle miles traveled and how they can tie that to different funding mechanisms. So right now we got the federal gas tax, you got state gas tax, those kind of things. There may be something with more electric vehicles coming on the road where they tax you per mile in addition to other gas taxes. So that's one of those things we're trying to figure out from a state level. Talking to a lot of other states that have these mechanisms in place now. So I think there's going to get a lot of traction in Raleigh on trying to change the funding mechanism to raise revenue for all these projects. One of the projects we did talk about in our regular meeting was the Independence Boulevard project. I don't know how long you've been in town, but I've moved here in 1994, and it seems like it's been under constant construction ever since then. The recent project that is approved in the state TIP, which is a funded project or a protected project, their initial budget was $600 million. Now it's coming in over $1 billion. So one of the things that CRTPO is going to be looking at is, what do we continue to do with that project? Do we move forward with that project? Do we break that project up into smaller increments? Because there's only so much money in the state and in our local MPO. So the question was asked, $400 million, what can that do? For example, our Highway 73 project from 16 in Lincoln County all the way to Concord is a $150 million project. Now, assuming based off of their track record, the project's going to be about $300 million. So we could build that entire project for just the cost overruns for Independence Boulevard. So that's going to be interesting conversations in the next few months. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, you may want to watch those meetings. It's going to be a very interesting vote. Most of the time, a lot of those votes are unanimous in a lot of different ways. Charlotte controls 41% of the vote with one person. So for that project to get reshuffled or something like that, the rest of the board, which is, I don't know the number of members, 20 voting members, 19 of them would have to be opposed to it. So that would be very interesting to watch. If that project does get shifted or shifted back, doesn't mean we would get the project because it's a state road project and it would go somewhere else, probably like Asheville, Highway 26 or something like that. So just something to kind of keep your eye on. The governor signed something in the middle of March about $175 million, which is part of the economic package from the federal government not long ago, but they signed it for only state roads and bridges. So we were hoping to get a little bit of money from that to help facilitate and accelerate some of these projects. But right now, that's for state road projects and bridges. And then probably the last thing, and I mentioned this last meeting, a lot of our projects that were put on hold during COVID, Highway 73, all engineering was completed on that, but they stopped all design, everything on projects like that. They have restarted those projects. That doesn't mean they're going to accelerate them, but we're doing what we can to see if there's anywhere we can find additional money to move those projects up. Highway 73 was from 2022 and 23 is when they were going to start. Now it's pushed back to 26 and 27. So I know it's kind of a long-winded report, but thought everybody should be aware of that. That's all I have. Our next meeting is April 21st. You can watch those online if you have nothing else to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Munger.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended the Huntersville Ordinance Advisory Board meeting on April 1st, where we discussed the upcoming changes to the tree mitigation ordinance, adequate public facilities ordinance, and we also had an interesting discussion on the viability of the traffic impact analysis ordinance. Additionally, I will be attending a meeting on Wednesday with Quality North Carolina representatives from various Mecklenburg County municipalities and the County Board of Commissioners to discuss the best path forward for the non-discrimination ordinance to protect at-risk members of our LGBTQ community. And last, as always, if you have the opportunity to give, please consider supporting our nonprofits such as Angels and Sparrows, Caterpillar Ministries, Bags of Hope, and Ada Jenkins. And that's all I have.
All right. Commissioner Phillips, good evening.
Yes, sir. On Wednesday, April 7th, there will be a COVID-19 vaccine event at the Waymer Center in historic Pottstown. There are still vaccine appointments available. The link is too long to spell out for you guys, so if you are interested, email me at sphillips@huntersville.org, and my email should automatically respond with the link to sign up. This will be the Pfizer vaccine, and a second dose event will also be taking place at the Waymer Center. I'd like to congratulate Huntersville resident Eric Rao for winning an Esteemed Sunshine Award from Elon University's North Carolina Open Government Coalition for efforts to increase transparency in local government. And for those who know these meetings well, I'm not a t-shirt person. However, I wanted to represent a nonprofit. They're named Watchmen of the Streets, and I've volunteered with them for years, and they're very near to my heart. Watchmen of the Streets goes into homeless camps throughout North Carolina, including Lake Norman, that aren't known, and provides supplies, resources, and in the process, true bonds are made. This is why my little human came to join my family. They are $20,000 short of their fiscal year operating budget and have a month to fill this large gap. If you are in a place to financially give, please consider donating to them because they truly save lives with what they do, and I've experienced it. You can donate at watchmenofthestreets.com, and if you have any questions or concerns about them, I'll talk to you about them all day. And that's all I have.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any staff questions at this time?
Mr. Mayor, I do
Commissioner Bales?
have a couple. I just would like to get an update on where the Main Street project is sitting, as well as the 21 widening and interchange.
We'll let Stephen come up and give you better details.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
For the 21 and Gilead intersection project and interchange project, the latest update I have from NCDOT, which was probably last week, they are still indicating the end of April to get started. Don't know if that'll still happen
Which
or
year?
not. Right now, they're saying this year. But that's the latest update I have. don't have any definite day or anything like that. They're continuing to work on utilities and relocating utilities, gas, telephone. I know they're still doing that.
So all of the utilities have not been moved yet?
As far as I understand, they're still working on relocating utilities for that project.
Okay.
As far as the Main Street project, we had the bid opening. I guess that was the week before last, and an apparent low bidder was found. We've turned in that paperwork to DOT to get concurrence, and they're continuing to move forward with the process on that. Looking at probably a June start time is what we're currently targeting of this year.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Commissioner Boone?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask Anthony Roberts a couple questions. One is an attaboy. Whoever cut the shrubbery back on the sidewalk of 115 going north from Dr. Craven's house, you can walk on that sidewalk now and not have to walk in the street. Thank you, whoever did that. And the second one is, there's been a lot of discussion about possible new town hall. If we could possibly look into power washing the old town hall, I think it's starting to look a little worn on the outside. Thank you.
We'll make it happen.
Thank you.
That's all I
Any
have,
other
Mr. Mayor.
staff questions? All right, I believe we have one speaker signed up other than for public hearing. Ms. Kovacs?
Mayor, quick question, was there agenda change on,
We're not there yet. Out of practice, huh?
well, Emily was helping me out.
Hi, good evening.
Hi.
Please state your name and address. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Amber Kovacs, and I live at 207 Greenway Street. I'm here to speak about item 9G, resolution opposing the postponement of the 2021 Huntersville municipal election. It's a topic that I'm thankful is being discussed tonight, so thank you, Mayor Anarella and Commissioner Phillips. Within the past year, due to the pandemic and large situations arising, there seems to be a significant increase in community involvement in town functions. There's been a growing interest in knowledge of town actions and opinions being expressed. Just in my past 6 months of significant involvement, I've seen many people express a desire to learn more because it seems more important than ever. The statement, more important than ever, often comes up because the more information we find out, the more we realize there's a lack of transparency. The current board was elected and took an oath to serve for 2 years, not 3. The vast majority of constituent concerns come from the fact that we, the people, don't feel that we're being listened to. On various occasions, we've expressed concerns and used facts redundantly according to some, and yet those are negated with actions. Our town elections are not affected by the census, so our elections should continue as regularly scheduled and allow people to vote a board that they feel they can trust. Waiting a year and having an election for only a 1-year term will hurt any candidate who is not independently wealthy or already on the board, and our elections should be accessible for all to run. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Nobody else has signed up speaking other than public hearing. Okay. Now, are there any agenda changes?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, there is one agenda change. We'd like to move item 10N to, under consent, to other business, item 9H.
Okay. Any other changes? Have a motion?
That is a motion.
Second. You made the change, you have to make the motion too. Okay, second. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? All right, we'll move on. Our first item on our agenda tonight is, first I'd like to know if there are any planning board members here tonight. You can stand up and introduce yourself or come to the mic, whichever.
Well, I have a voice.
Okay.
My name is Frank Gammon, Planning Board. I'm also Derek Paul.
Okay. All right, so we'll open up item 8A, conduct a public hearing on petition R21-01, a conditional rezoning request by Tight Investments LLP to rezone 10205 Sanford Road from general residential to highway commercial conditional district to develop a daycare center. Good evening, Mr. Priest.
Good evening. It's good to see everyone today. I'd like to put the staff report in the record, please. So the application before us this evening is a conditional district rezoning. You see the site in front of us here on 73 on Sanford Road. The parcel is currently zoned general residential and is proposed to be rezoned to highway commercial conditional district. As for sake of comparison, the existing highway commercial colors on the zoning map are the pink. So that's highway commercial. So this is the area in question, the site. Some aerial photography of the area in question to get a better view there, again on 73. In between the Cambridge Grove and the Hampton Ridge single-family residential subdivisions. The site is almost completely wooded at this time. The rezoning plan, again, is shown here. The site is about 5 acres in size. The proposed use is a daycare use specifically. A lot of times when we have conditional rezonings, there'll be a note on the plan that says all the uses allowed in highway commercial are being proposed and allowed or permitted. That's not the case with this plan. The note on the plan specifically calls for a daycare use. So if the rezoning was approved, the only use permitted on the site, the way it's currently drawn up, is for a daycare use. The building size is 16,000 square feet. The proposed number of children, as noted on the plan, would be 250, which would include 25 after-school children with about 50 employees. So here's the architectural elevations also submitted in the conditional rezoning application. They're conceptual at this time. Those type of things may shift a little bit, but this is the conceptual elevations that were submitted as part of the application. So going through some of the items addressed in the staff report, the rezoning site plan issues, one of which the Bill 2 line is proposed to be modified through the ordinance. The ordinance allows through the conditional district process, the town board can modify certain aspects of the ordinance if it's in the spirit and intent of what the code is trying to get accomplished. So again, one of the modifications that the applicant is asking is to move the building back from 15 feet toward the street, Sanford Road, and move it back to about 200 feet. And the reason for that is the driveway, as you see, the only access that they can get is on 73 at this point. And so the driveway has to snake around, go back to the back. With that modification there and the small residential parcel in the front, it's very difficult to have the building, if not impossible, to have the building front on 73 in the classical way that you see commercial buildings to the east, or I should say to the west of the subject property. So staff is in favor of that modification because of the special circumstances that are taking place there. Secondly, there's also a buffer modification request, and that's you can see those in the red arrows, pointing out the modification or the reduction in the buffer from 30 feet down to 10 feet. So in the highway commercial zoning district, any highway commercial district adjacent to single family residential or residential, there's a required 30 feet. And so they're requesting to modify that where the red arrows are pointed to. One, on the western side of the site, that's adjacent to the Cambridge Grove open space. And then two, toward the front, near the small parcel actually owned by the town of Huntersville. They're on the west side of that parcel to be able to fit the project on this site. A smaller issue, but one that is just noted for future construction. The TIA was done, and we'll discuss that a little bit, but the TIA was done in one of the recommended requirements, and I think NCDOT is also requiring that a right turn lane be put in from 73 into the facility. And that improvement, that widening, is going to push the sidewalks and the required street trees outside of the existing right-of-way. So in order to put those improvements in, an easement from the town of Huntersville and the Hampton Ridge subdivision HOA would be required. And that's just a note and an FYI to draw attention to that. Transportation issues, as highlighted again in the staff report, just briefly. TIA was conducted and accepted by engineering staff. The mitigation and the outcome of that TIA was one, again, a right turn lane going into the facility from 73, and two, a secondary or second left turn lane from 115 onto Sanford Road, Old Statesville Road onto Sanford Road. So the applicants are willing to do that. There's a note on the plan that says they will, but one of the notes is not clear, so staff is recommending that note be modified to clarify the recommendation from the TIA. Another transportation issue that we wanted to just briefly cover, and this is something that the adjacent property owners have discussed as well, the potential for cut-through traffic at the site. So you'll see here in the photo on the bottom right, I believe, it's a little bit light, but I think that's what with the red arrows, you can see the possibility for people, an individual using this site, it's a right in, right out only. So for anybody coming from 77 and coming east on Sanford Road, they'll have a few options of how to get to this facility. One, they can go all the way down to 115 and make a U-turn and come down and go to the facility, take a right into the facility. Two, they can go past the facility and go not as far as 115 and go to Knoxwood Road and take a U-turn there and go and take a right into the facility. Or a concern of the residents and a possibility is coming down and taking the leftover at Cambridge Grove, go into the facility, you see it here in the red arrows, going up Cambridge Grove, taking a right at the amenity center, then taking a right on Hampton Grove Road there, and then taking another right and then going into the facility. So that's a possibility. Those streets are public, and so that would be legal to be able to do that. But the use or any use proposed at this location, that is a possibility as an FYI that could cut through traffic could happen there. Another transportation issue we wanted to highlight was the TIA did not necessarily cover and does not cover small intersections in the town. So the TIA covers major intersections like 73, Rich Hatchett Road, 73, 115, and studies the capacity of those intersections. The movements that people will likely, or customers will likely use to get to this facility, the leftover at Knoxwood Lane, the leftover at Cambridge Grove Road, was not studied in the traffic impact analysis. So what staff is asking to make sure that the increase in traffic would be able to be accommodated for at those places is asking the applicant for traffic counts there. We've been working with the applicant and did ask for a turning template to make sure that ones could make a U-turn at Knoxwood, as you see up on the top photo there. And engineering staff reviewed that, and it showed that yes, for a large passenger vehicle, they would be able to make that U-turn movement with the asphalt that's already there. But again, what the traffic is going to be like, can they accommodate the increase in traffic making these movements, is what we're still wanting to look at a little bit closer. Looking at these issues, staff did put in the staff report an alternate option, not better or worse, but just an alternate option that could be considered in regard to having, instead of the driveway being on 73, if the driveway was on Cambridge Grove, the traffic on Cambridge Grove, of course, would increase, but again, there wouldn't be a need for cut-through traffic. And that would significantly change the site in regard to buffers and many of those things outlined in the staff report. So just another option to discuss, but in order to do that, the applicant would need to talk to the Cambridge Grove HOA to get an easement through the property on the western side of the track. So going through and look at the land use considerations for rezoning, taking the property from general residential to highway commercial. The Sanford Road Highway 21 small area plan that was completed back in 2005 did have a land use recommendation for this site, and the recommendation was residential. As you can see in the photo, in the graphic there, highlighted by the arrow, that orange color is single-family residential. And then the bottom right, you can see that there was a specific idea and concept that the small area plan had in mind. The reason why there's a green line going through the property and a red line going through the property, it was discussed to have a north-south connector midway in between 21 Statesville Road and 115. At the time, the thinking was that would be a good midpoint to be able to cut through and have greenway, bicycle, pedestrian accommodation there at the proposed, what would be a traffic signal on Sanford Road. So the idea was this would be a good location to put a street through there, make all that work, and have connectivity north and south other than having to go to Statesville Road and 115. And we talked about that small parcel that was on the corner there of Sutter's Mill and 73. I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the street. That small parcel that's there on 73, the reason why the town owns that is because the town purchased that property for a potential signal that would go there to have a four-way stop, full access, and then have pedestrian accommodations going through there. So that's the reason why the town owns that small parcel. But since that time, since the 21 Sanford Road plan, the small area plan, NCDOT has again changed, of course, the function of 73 into a super street. So instead of having full access here and there, it's more of the U-turns, the U-turn bulbs, and keeping left turns restricted. So therefore, the concept that the 21 Sanford Road plan put forward in regard on the bottom right, having that pedestrian area connect from north and south, would be a lot more difficult. So that's something to keep in mind as we go through and we talk about the small area plan recommendation. It is residential. It could be residential, but it wouldn't have that north-south connectivity, or it would be more difficult to do so with the super street concept. The Huntersville 2040 Community Plan, the land use area that's identified for this area, so you've got the North Cross Shopping Center, and then of course you've got the commercial area to the east, 115 Activity Center, 11573. In between those two commercial areas is what's called the town core. And so the town core recommends different residential units of different kinds, townhomes, single-family homes, apartments are appropriate. But then here highlighted at the bottom, you see the description also says it may include non-residential development as specified in small area plans and other sites that meet locational criteria. So right away we see that the town core kind of envisions or maintains that commercial could be an option in the appropriate situation. So going through and looking some of the policies, what's consistent with the daycare application, the rezoning application to highway commercial? Well, the 2040 plan wants to allow more intensity only where transportation, infrastructure, and utilities already exist. So Sanford certainly could handle that intensification. That's where you would want it, on the Sanford Road that could handle that infrastructure there. Policy LU6 throughout encourages mixed uses in the town core, including commercial. So again, from a general perspective, the 2040 plan essentially supports some commercial in certain applications. However, you go to the right-hand side, the right-hand column, the devil's in the details, so to speak. Policy LU 6.2 recommends commercial uses, and they're encouraged as described in the small area plan. And of course, we just discussed the small area plan recommends residential. So there's an inconsistency there. Policy LU 6.3 recommends small-scale neighborhood serving commercial that's designed in a context-sensitive manner. So staff looked at that policy and looked at a couple things. One, the daycare center proposed is somewhat large. It's one of the larger daycare centers currently in Huntersville. And also, number two, the applicant is asking for a reduction and modification of the buffer requirements. So having the large, very large daycare that is asking for a reduction in buffer does not seem from staff's perspective to be designed in a context-sensitive manner. Another policy that is applicable is policy LU 5.3, and that is to support infill housing options near services, shopping, employment, and transit stations. So this location being recommended by the small area plan to be residential, being in a location that is near and within walking distance to services, shopping, and employment, and being surrounded by single-family residential makes for a very suitable candidate for infill housing along 73. So therefore, looking at those facts, we identified that as a policy that is not quite consistent with the application at this time. So staff recommendation, looking at the aspects of the ordinance, infill residential would be suitable. However, the 2040 plan does mention and talk about commercial in the town core. So if there were some modifications to the plan, if there were some modifications that the town board deemed that the small area plan needed to be changed to commercial, and the other items in the staff recommendation are taken care of. For instance, the stacking counts are given to us to show that Cambridge Grove Drive and Knoxwood Drive could handle the additional traffic. And then cut-through traffic, the applicant says, and they have maintained in the neighborhood meeting that they would discourage their parents from dropping off and using the neighborhood to get to the facility. If they did as much as they could to do that, then staff could support the application. So that's my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have, and the applicant is here, Jay Henson, to represent the applicant.
Commissioner Hines?
Yeah, thank you, Brad. Couple things. Current zoning, general residential.
Yes, sir.
It currently said a couple things. It says that it's really, we don't use GR since 1996 because it was old Mecklenburg County zoning. But in that, as a use is permitted with conditions, it says it's a school is permitted as a condition. Can you explain the difference of a school and a daycare center? It's still, is it not education? So you could have a preschool there based off of permitted conditions, but a daycare center is the reason we're doing the highway commercial zoning. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
So what throws it into a school category per our ordinance? Why is daycare not considered a school?
So there is a complete separation between daycare center and school, but the ordinance doesn't give a definition for a preschool. So staff has had to go through and do research, on the internet to find out what's the difference and how are they different. So going through the research and trying to understand the difference, there's a few things that were highlighted in the staff report that just kind of focuses on a few things. So one, preschools have some type of educational curriculum that they focus on, and daycare is more about supervision. Two, and probably the biggest difference, is educational facilities and schools, they don't operate after business hours in most situations. They release usually around the mid-afternoon time, and the peak hour traffic in the evening is not applicable. In this situation, this application, the daycare center would be I believe it's 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. So that's a supervision type timeline there. And then the third difference usually is very young children, 6 weeks or so, are not accepted in preschools, but in daycares, very young infants usually are. So looking at the application and looking what's before us, staff made the determination that what was being proposed is a daycare center. And daycare centers in the ordinance are not allowed in residential, and very specific zones are permitted. So highway commercial was the zone that was needed.
Okay, so an applicant could come in and put a charter school here. I know it's 5 acres. They could do a 2-story charter school, 200 kids. They have to park it and all that. But that would be a use permitted by right.
That's correct, under GR.
Thank you. Regarding the 2040 plan, talked about infill development. So let's just for a second say this project goes away. Based off the 2040 plan, I think you said our plan calls for an infill development, apartments, townhouses, things like that. Would that be, is that correct, based off our 2040 plan?
Well, under the current zoning, apartments wouldn't be permitted. The residential density would be limited to 20,000 square foot lots.
Right.
So in order to go any denser than that, it would need a rezoning.
Which would be more likely to TR zoning, neighborhood residential zoning, something similar?
If it was an apartment complex or a one building, one lot type of thing, it would be NR.
It'd be NR, okay. So with that being said, that we, you know, the 2040 plan encourages infill development. What does that do to buffers, being residential upon residential? Will they have any buffers like this project has buffers?
If it's not a subdivision, you would not have buffers.
Okay,
If it was a subdivision, they subdivided it, I believe the requirement is 20-foot buffers along the perimeter.
okay. That's all I have for right now, thank you.
Commissioner Phillips?
Oh, one last question. The town, how did the town end up with that small piece of property right there on the edge?
So that was the piece of property that was acquired in expectation of a traffic signal. Before NCDOT went to the super street design, it was thought that that street there at that location would be able to house a full access intersection. And so the lot was purchased to put the utilities, to put all the utilities needed for that traffic signal. But after it was purchased, the plan changed in NCDOT.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Phillips?
Do you want us to ask the applicant questions now, or do you want us to go first priest and then applicant?
Staff?
Okay. All right. Who maintains the streets in Cambridge Grove, and who owns them?
So they are town streets, I would say. That's correct, yep, town streets.
That's all I have. Brian asked my other one.
Commissioner Bales?
Yes, I have a couple of questions, and they're really follow-ups to Commissioner Hines. It is my understanding, and I wish I had my big fat binder sitting here with me today for the zoning ordinance, but it's my understanding in regards to general residential, the verbiage in there states that any new development that's sitting in general residential must be rezoned. Now I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it in front of me, but that was effective of '96. So if somebody wanted to come in and develop on general residential, it's my understanding it would have to be rezoned to bring it up to current standard. If that is true, and I can sit back and wait and let staff answer that, but if that is true, if this, and you're recommending, the presentation showed infill housing, can you describe to me what infill housing looks like?
Well, on the first question, I would have to ask Jack on that because I am not familiar with that stipulation.
I had to highlight it in my book because I stumbled on it and went, whoa.
Okay. So let me skip ahead to the second part.
Mm-hmm.
Infill residential could take many forms.
Okay,
So, in the staff report, I think the recommendation was medium density. If you've got single family, again, context sensitive design, if you've got single family residential surrounding it, then density that was too high would also not be in character with the existing development. So you would have perhaps maybe a small area townhomes with single family mix, or the 2040 plan talked a lot about the missing middle. Some of those things like duplexes, triplexes, quadruplexes, that are not really done too much anymore, and encouraging those type of uses. So a mixture of that with some single family seemed very appropriate as far as infill residential, especially being so close to services and employment and transit as recommended by the 2040 plan.
If it were to be rezoned neighborhood residential, a small apartment building as well?
If it was rezoned by right, if we just changed the color to deep yellow, yes, someone would have the ability to come in and do an apartment building, one apartment building, 3 stories tall.
I only know this because I'm facing that myself in my own little neighborhood and seeing something similar going up, so.
Yes, ma'am.
Wanting, I'm sorry?
Yes, ma'am.
So just wanting to make sure that a lot of times when we say neighborhood residential, no one thinks apartments. They think single-family homes, and that is not necessarily the case.
That's correct. It could be a combination thereof with other things as well.
Okay. Up here really quick. I don't have anything else for you at this time.
Commissioner Munger?
Sure. Was there anything recommended by the TIA that was not already recommended by NCDOT in terms of changes?
Stephen, do you know? So that's a no. Yes.
It's a no, correct?
I didn't know if he didn't know. or
Remember,
the
not
answer was
everybody
no.
can see him, so the question is, any additional changes from NCDOT to the town's TIA?
Yes, the answer is no.
Thank you. You had mentioned something about the size of this particular facility, and I hate to put you on the spot, I apologize. Can you share with us any example of a similar facility, daycare facility within Huntersville?
Well, there are several daycare facilities in front of what used to be the Earth Fair. And those building sizes are around 8,000 to 10,000 square feet. To
Top of
give
my
you
head,
a-
I forget how big this one is, 20,000?
16,000.
16.
Maybe a little bit more, maybe in the 12. I don't remember exactly, but they're in the 12 to 8,000 range, I would say.
And I'm trying to picture it, it's on the side of Earth Fair or across the street from Earth Fair?
It is in front of Earth Fair, to the
Okay.
right. One's on Boren, and then 2 others are on the left on,
So kind of in the middle of other commercial facilities.
yes, commercial buildings and offices.
Thank you. And the last question I have might be for Emily. Feel free. Do we have any sort of recourse to pursue remedies from developers who left behind the types of stormwater drainage issues we have here and we've seen in other locations? Or is that more something that the individual homeowner would have to pursue?
So Brad and I discussed briefly prior to the meeting the fact that the stormwater control regulations have really become more stringent over time. So previously, there were not as stringent regulations, in which case, if, let's say, there wasn't a regulation in place, we don't necessarily have any recourse because there wouldn't have been an applicable regulation. There is a section of 160D, and it's 160D 925, which does allow for a local government to enforce stormwater regulations. So what it really boils down to is what we have in our regulations and what was applicable at the time of the development. So we would have to look and see, what the conditions were at that specific development period.
That's all I have for staff.
Ready to hear from the applicant?
Can I have one question regarding that? Do we currently have a stormwater project working there, or is it approved?
A stormwater project?
I think
I'm sorry.
Mr. Fox was nodding his head.
There's currently a stormwater project in the design phase that would be downstream of this parcel.
So it would not impact this right now?
No, if they would be held to to, as Emily mentioned, the current stormwater regulations, so that, you know, their design would have to meet the current criteria, and we would not see any negative impact to the project that we're proposing.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's hear from the applicant, please.
I'm Keisha. Nice to meet you.
Good
Hello,
evening.
everyone. I am Keisha Leinberger, the owner of Huntersville Community Preschool at the proposed site on Sanford Road that we're talking about tonight. And what we are talking about is a 16,000 square foot building. I actually did own a Goddard School previously, and that site is about 8,500 square feet for Goddard School. Primrose is about 10,000 square feet. Kids are usually around 12,000. And I believe there's a leaf spring being built over near Cowboys Restaurant, and that's probably about this size. What makes our school a little bit different is it's an owner on-site concept. I've owned preschools and daycares for 20 years, put all of the information that I've learned, years of experience into this one building design, which has actually been built 3 times already. This is the 4th time this particular building will be built. The reason it is a little bit bigger is we have a sensory tactile room for our pre-toddlers. We have an activity room for our older kids. We also have a full-service chef kitchen. A degreed chef works in the kitchen along with the chef assistant. All of our meals are homemade fresh every day on site. Also, 75% of our lead staff are degreed staff, and our administrative staff are also degreed staff. So it's a very it's why I like to call it a preschool and not a daycare. Truthfully, preschools usually are lesser hours. Big schools are less hours, but also with big schools, there's before school drop-off care and after school drop-off care. So a lot of times those hours do shift your typical working parent hours, and our school is slated to be 7 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. for those full hours, and parents are allowed to drop off and pick up any time within those hours. There is typically somewhat of a morning rush and an afternoon rush, but there's no set time for the children and parents to arrive and to depart. Also, a lot of our families are at least 2 children families, if not 3 children families. 25 of those children are slated to be after schoolers. Another 25 are slated to be half-day pre-K. So all of those bring those numbers down. Of the 50 staff, 35 are slated to be full-time and 15 are slated to be part-time. And those staff also cross each other. So there's never 50 staff on site at the same time. The same with the children. Typically, you also have at least 10% of the children that are absent on any given day. Parents pay for full-time, but they use and come whatever hours that work for them. We do have a high-quality educational curriculum. All of the schools I've owned in the past have always been 5-star preschools, which is the highest level of North Carolina State Star standards. And I will tell you, I want to thank the neighbors for being here today. I've actually had a really good time getting to know the neighbors and enjoy them very much. What makes this property very special to me, and the reason I've stuck with this property for so long, is that it's on Sanford. You have wonderful road frontage, but it's nestled in the property with neighborhoods on 3 sides, and truly a preschool development. And what you'll see across the nation in successful developments are daycares and preschools down in neighborhoods, serving the neighborhood. It's a concept that does work, and this property is a nice way to do that. Also, the Huntersville town has my heart. It fits this model of high-quality educational preschool. Our demographic is typically a 2-parent working household, both parents working outside the home. So they pay a little bit more for a higher quality service because they want to know their children are safe, healthy, happy, and learning all at the same time. And I wouldn't provide anything less than that. And it's actually while it's a larger size school model, it's also a successful model. It's a very expensive model. I couldn't see the square footage coming down to support the property purchase and the level of curriculum, education, and staff that we provide. I can answer any questions you have.
Commissioner Phillips, quick tonight.
I got a lot. I
We
got
do
one-
also have our engineer here for site planning.
Okay, mine are more basic, I guess, around the school
Okay.
stuff. I'm learning because we have a toddler, so, you know,
Oh, good.
preschool is something. I was curious if you guys will be offering scholarship programs potentially, especially for like, you know, working parents, single parents, low-income parents.
Good to hear you say that. What I do is, we do have some state subsidized spaces, especially for our teacher staff, and that is something else we do, is most all of our staff are local moms in the area, and of our staff in the past, I have always granted their children access to the school for free if they were teachers at the school. It allows them to be with their children. And then I also do allow scholarship opportunities, usually for parents of my school that have hardship situations. I've had parents diagnosed with cancer. I've had military families that have attended for free throughout treatment or while they were getting education for military.
I was wondering what your age group breakdown percentage-wise is as far as how the school would be structured.
There are 2 infant rooms, which are, and somebody said 6 weeks. Most all of our infants start at 3 months, thank the Lord. I prefer not to enroll 6-week-old infants because they're not quite settled in yet. So usually it's 3 months to 12 months as an age group. Then we have a pre-toddler age group, toddler age group, 3-year-old age group, 4 to 5-year-old age group. And I don't specialize in after-school care. The after-school spaces I have are siblings of children already involved. It's kind of a benefit for the parents to pick up at one place.
And my last question is, could you give examples of the programs or curriculums that you do?
Sure can. One thing that's, first of all, the chef kitchen is a big deal for a lot of our parents. When you look at tiers of food that food industry sells, you have high-quality restaurants, regular restaurants. Then you have schools and retirement communities are the bottom of the food chain. We do not do any food service. We pick up all of our food. We try to get a lot of locally sourced food for our parents, so the chef kitchen is very important. Also, all of our extracurricular activities are included in the tuition. We don't nickel and dime the parents. And another thing that's important for me is that all children in that age group experience, whether it's soccer shots, Mr. Music, or robotics, all the kids in that age group take that class. It's not just, quote, the kids or the parents who pay for that class. And then we do use the state-approved curriculum planning.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Bales?
Yes, sorry, I'm a little bit discombobbled here. There's a lot of questions going through my head. You said there's a tactile room?
Sensory tactile room, and that's strictly for pre-toddlers. Infants are really too young to be in there, and the toddlers tear it up. But what that is, it's a room that the pre-toddlers, which is 12 months to 24 months, they go in that room. There's ball pits, there's things on the wall for them to move, there's lights, there's textures, sensory types of things. So the education starts from the infant room all the way through pre-K. And that's what we do special. We work on maintaining and keeping our parents so that we work with those children all the way through the program.
You stated that the curriculum that you do use is state approved?
It is. In fact, in order to be a North Carolina 5-star preschool, you have to use state-approved curriculum.
And where would you get that curriculum?
We usually order it through Kaplan. Creative curriculum is the one that I've used in the past.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Creative curriculum.
Creative curriculum. Okay. Sorry, give me just one quick second. You've answered that question. I imagine that you looked at our community well in the demographics.
I did.
And I have spoken with a number of parents who have stated how challenging it is to find access to quality daycare. Did you find that to be true here in our community?
It's funny you say that. I've actually already had parents call me from the community wanting to go on a list.
Oh, wow.
I don't know how they got my name. I don't know how they got my number, but they have already called me, tracked me down, wanting to get on a list.
Okay. I think one of the last questions that I'm going to have for you is to talk a little bit about the buffer, because It looks like a couple of the asks, and I don't know if that's for, this question is for you, or,
Yes. This is Jay Henson from Henson Foley. He's our project engineer, and I can stay up here with him in case you.
sure. Mr. Henson, is there the ability, I mean, you're asking for the waiver, but is there the ability in here to widen that buffer in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, we actually looked at a couple options. And as you can tell how the site, it gets wider towards the back, narrow in the front. And the driveway really put, you know, that restriction there. So we tried to look at how can we position the building to be the least impactful to some of the neighbors. So one option was, we could push it back, but it would probably take like 80 feet to move it back. And it puts the parking lot and then the stormwater pond, et cetera, near the back of the site. And that didn't seem to make sense to do that. Another option is we looked at, can we trim off the building, but then you'd have to displace it to the back some, and that would shift it back a little bit more. So the thought was, okay, on Cambridge Grove, there's about a 6 or 7 foot berm that rises up towards the site, and it's heavily landscaped, and then it drops back down, so the building sits down lower. And you can see there's where we sort of highlighted some of the buffer and took some, you know, there's some of the street view shots. So the site's gonna be buffered with like 100 feet or 140 feet of vegetation there anyway with that open space. But as far as, you know, can we try to add something? Can we do a fence? What would make sense there? I mean, we certainly could try to do something. I really would hate to push the building back further though.
Okay. Well, I used to live in Hampton Ridge, built a house in Hampton Ridge 21 years ago. And so I'm very familiar with this lot. And I have to tell you, one of the concerns that I've always had with this lot is that someone would want to come in and put some 1, 2, 2, 3-story apartment building in there. And I don't feel like that's the right use. If there's a way for us to make this work and make sure that the stormwater issues are being addressed, I think that it has the potential to be a good project for our community. Now we'll just leave it at that for the moment.
Yeah, and on the stormwater note there, just to give you a quick little synopsis of what we did is, I've gone out there probably 3 times. I've met with neighbors. I've looked at from where the site begins down to the existing town culvert. We've talked, we looked at patterns in the yard to see if there was any erosion problems. We even met with a couple of the adjacent neighbors, and they said, hey, is there any way you could shift the pond over, I guess it'd be to the left if you're looking at the screen, to be further away from some of the neighbors, and we were able to accommodate that. And we also decided to really go above and beyond the ordinance. Our ordinance requires a 10-year storm to be captured and released at that rate. So we've gone up to a 25-year storm, which is, not typical for a lot of projects like that. And I wanted to add that.
Any other questions, Commissioner Bass? Commissioner Hines?
I have one question, may bring up more questions, I don't know. But we've received a lot of emails, a lot of conversation about traffic. One of the images we showed earlier was potential cut through, going through Cambridge Grove, going through the neighborhood, come back around. On the staff report, alternate option showed a connection through Cambridge Grove Drive. Have you all had conversations with the Cambridge Grove HOA regarding that connection?
That's correct, and we had responded back to staff with a contact, but Matt Montgomery, who is associated with the developer and the property owner, reached out to see if we could get a driveway off Cambridge Grove. And honestly, that would make a lot of the issues or concerns, minimized. The buffer would be able to be, it would take that driveway that has to go through the front out, and it would be able to come out to the side. It would give, that extra point of access. But that would, as far as we've taken it.
So did Cambridge Grove have a response? They just say,
At this point, the answer was that they were not interested in pursuing that.
okay. I'm kind of like Commissioner Bales. I used to live in Hampton Ridge years ago. And this property's always been a topic of conversation, what happens with it. And I wish that there would be some type of, regardless of who the applicant is, Cambridge Grove, that would be very helpful, alleviate a lot of traffic regardless of what the use is, to have some type of connection. That's all I have, thank you.
Commissioner Munger?
Yeah, to the applicant, you had mentioned that this particular building had been built 3 times prior. And it sounded like maybe not as big, but can you tell me where
No,
that
it's
was?
the exact same building plan, built in TGK first, then Still Creek, and over in Ballantyne. It was originally called TGK Children's Academy. I had sold a copy of the business model, and they have duplicated that 3 times. They have since changed the name to Oak Crest Preparatory Academy. You can go online and see the full interior.
Okay.
How great is that?
That'd be great. Also, and just to ease my imagination, there's a piece of land right there that kind of cuts in at the front there. 2 things about it. My understanding is that A, it's owned by the town of Huntersville. B, you're actually will be gaining access to some of that for the access lane, the right lane. Is that correct? And that might be a staff question
Yes.
too, I apologize.
No, you're correct. It's, the TIA recommendation was to extend that right turn lane so it would encroach into there and would need an easement through there.
Okay. If you had the entire parcel in a hypothetical, would that change the configuration of the anything there?
It's a good question. I think you could see how it sort of narrows down a little bit. And that was our goal, was to try to get this up, all the way up to the road, but we couldn't get it through there. It would help to have the parcel. I think we could get a little bit closer. It would keep it away from the rear of the project more. The buffer would probably not change much.
All right. That's all I have. Thanks.
Any other questions? Commissioner Bowe?
Yes, I got a couple questions. You mentioned, the traffic and making the U-turns and everything like that for cars, but you've also mentioned that you'll be bringing all of your food deliveries and solid waste. How are you going to handle that? And about what time do you think that's going to happen?
The solid waste would be our dumpster disposal, which at my other school, which was really about the same size, was once a week. And we had that done at off times or evening times, totally non-traffic, because it's hard for them to get around the cars and whatnot. We don't have a food delivery service. Our staff do that and pick that up in their vans. So we don't do the big delivery service. We don't do the big trucks.
I guess my concern is if it's 6:30 in the morning and you have a solid waste dumpster guy backing up, those people around there are definitely going to hear it. And if it's at 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night,
I can schedule that. I can schedule that for, if there are concerns there, we can schedule that at our convenience and at the neighbor's convenience, if that's a problem.
Okay.
And that's another key factor is this is an owner on-site school. I am at the school all day, every day. This is my job. It's not a corporate daycare. It's not a franchise. So I can work with the neighbors. I can work with the town and address those concerns personally.
are you at liberty to tell me how much the tuition would be at this facility?
Infants are usually right around $1,200 to $1,300 a month, and pre-K is $1,000.
Okay, thank you.
It's right around the same Goddard School Primrose cost, and I think there's a learning experience right down the road. It's comparable in the fees.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
All right, any questions? All right, you might be called back, don't go anywhere. We'll get to our public comments on this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our first speaker tonight will be Tracy Dawson. After that will be Barry Jackson. Ms. Dawson, good evening. Please state your name and address. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Tracy Dawson. My address is do you need the exact address? 17020 Stinson Avenue in Huntersville. Thanks for letting me speak. I didn't know I was going to go first, but I am a resident of Cambridge Grove. I just heard about this project, and I want you to know that I'm very opposed to this rezoning request. First of all, the traffic is the biggest concern that we have, all right? I know that there are going to be plans to try to avoid the design of cutting through Cambridge Grove to allow people to turn east on 73 or to just get back out. But I can promise you, no matter what you do, it's going to happen. And we have too many kids and families that walk these streets, ride their bikes on it. We have bus stops right there at the corner of Glencrest and Cambridge Grove. It's going to be a problem. We have issues with our own residents blowing through the four-way stop. When you add parents who are going through just to drop off kids or to turn around or to get into something, it's going to increase. So we have a huge concern on that alone. I love the idea of what she has to offer with childcare and everything, but I can tell you based on those rates, living in that neighborhood, I wouldn't be able to afford it. I'm a stay-home mom. I have not worked in 16 years because it's too much money to pay for childcare when you have more than one kid. You basically start paying to work. So this is already priced out of my range. All right? So another issue is, of course, the traffic. We don't know what this is going to do to 73. We have a huge athletic complex. It's getting ready to open up off of Old Statesville, correct? We don't know yet what that traffic is going to do to 73. 73 is already very difficult to get out of on regular hours, just coming right out of Cambridge Grove. If we add this on top of whatever the athletic complex brings, we're going to have more issues. And a lot of that is based on this super highway style that was constructed where there's only right turns and then you have to go down and do U-turns. That is problematic enough. But if you add this business, it's going to make it worse. I can promise you that. Now, I love the idea of this child care center. It just needs to be somewhere else. This was zoned for residential. We would respectfully ask that you keep it as such. And of course, I'm sure some of my neighbors are going to speak about the concerns with the water, stormwater management and things like that. We have people with serious problems that is only going to be exacerbated by this project. So I just want you to know that we feel very strongly against it. Is that my 3 minutes
you.
up?
All right.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Barry Jackson. So you can cheer tonight, okay, for the game, but let's keep respect for everybody. So Barry Jackson and then Mr. Richard Colvin will be next.
Jackson.
You have 3 minutes.
Cheryl with the B.
Excuse me?
Beryl Jackson.
Oh,
B-E.
Beryl, sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Please state your name correctly, and you have 3 minutes with your address, please.
My name is Beryl Jackson. I live at 10,422 Friars Gate Road in Hampton Ridge. I've been there for over 24 years. I am a board member of the HOA. I'm a former planning board member, and I love Huntersville. I want to speak to you about zoning. Merriam-Webster considers spot zoning to be a small parcel of land within the limits of another zone that is illegal when not done in accordance with a comprehensive plan. I'm very proud to say that Huntersville has 2 comprehensive plans. And so therefore, it would not bother me any to know that you are going to meet this requirement. However, sometimes, even when you have a comprehensive plan, if the zoning is done in an arbitrary way or a discriminatory way, then that is not always good for the neighbors, and sometimes it has been litigated across North Carolina. So I wanted to bring that to your attention, that this looks like spot zoning to us. North Carolina also has a statute on spot zoning. It's statute 160A-383. Again, it talks about making sure that your decision for zoning is in accord with your comprehensive community plan. As the neighbors found out about this project, Cambridge Grove, Hampton Ridge, and the Hamptons formed a task force so we could study the plan and study all of the ramifications for all of our neighborhoods. And we did surveys of all of our residents as well. And the overwhelming majority of our neighbors do not want it rezoned. Because we asked them. We didn't just arbitrarily decide we didn't want it and we were gonna stop it. We asked the neighbors, and once the neighbors told us what they wanted, then we studied the plan and the issues that they raised when we did our survey. So we have, with a fine-tooth comb, gone through the 2030 plan and the 2040 plan, since they're both in effect right now. And it indicates that the plan, the 2040 plan in particular indicates on page 68, land use item number 11, that you will protect existing housing stock by using planning tools that will safeguard them from potentially negative impacts of development and redevelopment. There is a cluster of 872 single-family homes that surround this parcel. Research conducted by our community say they're not in favor of it, not because it's a daycare, but because of where it's located. They could enjoy a daycare of this quality in the community, but just not in that location.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson.
Okay?
Our next speaker is Mr. Richard Colvin, and after that is Mary Colvin.
Good evening. My name is Richard Colvin. I live at 16509 Rudyard Lane in Huntersville. It's in the Hamptons community, and it's right between those two circles that Brad had up on his picture a little bit earlier, and it's a community that we're trying to preserve the character of. We conducted a survey of the Hamptons residents, and 89% of them were in opposition to this rezoning. As you might know, that's a lot of people. Some of them are a little bit more opposed than others and did some legal research and brought it to my attention. I thought I might share it with you about multiple precedent-setting litigations across North Carolina, where towns have tried to support developers when they go in with projects that really ruin the character of neighborhoods. And courts have ruled against, as Beryl said, a scattered pattern of land use designation. One such case I'll tell you about is Blade versus the City of Raleigh. Now, this was just about rezoning a 5-acre plot that was zoned as single-family housing into multifamily housing in order to allow for the construction of just 20 townhouses, not even an apartment building. The court found that no reason was offered for treating this property differently, and that the character of the existing neighborhood would be greatly harmed as a result. And that's my message to you here tonight. The character of our neighborhoods, Cambridge Grove, Hampton Ridge, and the Hamptons, would be greatly damaged by the location of this fine facility in this location. So think about that case. That was 20 townhomes, maybe 20 or 40 vehicles a day. Now, we're going to get a little bit more in depth on the transportation later, but this project proposes 310 at least car trips per day, most of which during the peak commuting times in that neighborhood. When school buses are coming in, people are trying to get out, get to work, and traffic's going down Sanford Road as it normally does. So I'd ask you, is this zoning request really going to preserve or destroy the character of the neighborhood? And if you're looking at me saying, well, how else would you use this project? What else would you have there? Given that we have a paucity of single-family housing at the moment, I would recommend that we put single-family homes there. It's a residential area, and we ask you to keep it residential. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mary Colvin, and then next would be Randolph Peacock. Good
Thank you,
evening.
Mayor.
Please
My
state
name
your name and address. You have
got
3
it.
minutes.
My name is Mary Colvin. I also live at 16509 Rudyard Lane in Huntersville, and we've lived there almost 10 years. I have two concerns to review with you today. One is safety, the other is traffic congestion. With regards to safety, this project has a little bit of a sense of a deja vu for some of the residents in Cambridge Grove and Hampton Ridge communities who raised bus stop safety concerns over 14 years ago based on their experiences living and driving in these neighborhoods. A child actually died before we could convince the town and CMS to move the original bus routes from Highway 73 into the neighborhoods. Today we urge you, do not rezone this property, which would introduce more traffic in the immediate vicinity. Not allowing rezoning of this property would support the 2040 town plan, page 100. 0 fatalities and 0 serious injuries. Now, a TIA was completed, but it did not take into consideration CMS school buses transporting our kids to and from school during peak hours, Monday through Friday, starting as early as 6:30 in the morning, usually concluding around 9, again starting in the afternoon as early as 2:15, and usually concluding around 4:30, 5 o'clock. According to the CMS Director of Transportation Logistical Runs, he gave me the information that there are 58 bus runs on a daily basis immediately in front of the property we are talking about. Bus runs in the nearby neighborhoods also include 20 in Cambridge Grove interior, 19 in Hampton Crossing, 15 in Knoxwood, and 22 in the Hamptons. Additional traffic of 786 trips, which were cited in the TIA, from the proposed daycare clients, perhaps in a rush to pick up or drop off their children, poses a risk for children waiting at bus stops and could cause delays in buses and school tardiness. This rezoning request decreases the safety of transporting our children to and from school. My second point is traffic congestion. In the first community survey of the town of Huntersville 2040 plan, 63% of the respondents said traffic and congestion is a top priority for Huntersville moving forward. Along the same lines, exactly our 3 neighborhood surveys cited traffic as the major concern for this project. There was a traffic impact analysis completed, but as Mr. Priest said earlier, it focused only on signaled intersections. It did not include 4 significant streets intersecting with Highway 73. Keep in mind, our 3 neighborhoods combined, 880 residences. It is hard to grasp the density of the traffic complexities of this short section of road unless you live there and drive it daily, or encourage your teenagers to drive it safely every day, especially during peak hours, which would coincide with the daycare center. It is only 158 yards, 1.5 football fields, or 470 feet. Within that time frame, that distance, 3 major neighborhood roads, 3 U-turn storage lanes, and sidewalks would be impacted. I'm now going to turn the next section of our traffic safety analysis that the neighborhood did over to our retired engineer, Randolph Peacock, who will further address our concerns about the traffic impact analysis. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Randolph Peacock, and after that, John Bryant.
Can you see this? This is kind of like an eye test. I don't know if it's really effective or not.
I failed it. I failed it already.
Failed.
So I tell you what, I'll just set this here.
Thank you, Mr. Peacock. Please state your name and address. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, Randolph Peacock, 17209 Cambridge Grove Drive. I also serve on the Cambridge Grove HOA board, and pleased to say that we have multiple neighbors that are with us tonight showing their support for expressing the concerns that we have. We recently sent a letter to the town of Huntersville, basically summarizing safety concerns that we had, and in turn asked that a safety evaluation be performed, a supplemental TIA. Part of our concern is the TIA, as we understand it, was a capacity study, by and large looking at the efficiency of the traffic as opposed to specifically the safety. So there are some TIAs that do focus on safety. My background comes from power plant licensing, so safety is near and dear to my heart, and I would recommend that we do the same thing here, just good engineering practice. With respect to the safety concerns, we've talked about the cut-through traffic. It is a concern. There are bus stops, neighborhood playground, pools and so forth there, and people do speed. They do run the stop signs. We appreciate what Huntersville Police does in being able to stop it, but they can't be there all the time. One of the biggest concerns we have is the Hampton Crossing intersection, okay, basically limits the right turn lane that they can have into the daycare. DOT recommended that it be 125 feet, but because of the Hampton Crossing, it can only be 75 feet. So it is not as safe as what DOT would recommend. So that's a risk. The traffic squeezes in there, people are trying to squeeze in, while people are trying to turn right out of Hampton Ridge, and that's a safety concern. Also, people that are turning out of the daycare, okay, there's limited line of sight. The sight distance profile, as I understand it, is very close to being out of compliance. And subsequently, the question was raised by our traffic engineer about whether or not the data that was used was accurate data, and he recommended that a survey be performed to ensure that it is the most accurate data, because that could be a showstopper with respect to DOT. So with that right turn lane, as well as this particular, the site distance profile, we would encourage that the DOT go ahead and look at this driveway permit as a condition, that we evaluate this before a rezoning decision is made, as opposed to just letting that happen after the fact. It's just too critical to this decision. We also have concerns that the daycare, basically driveway, cuts the Cambridge Grove right turn lane from about 210 feet down to about 125 feet. So again, it's the same thing, traffic squeezing in, as well as the potential for people leaving the daycare using the Cambridge Grove right lane as a merge lane, which could add a lot of confusion in the area, increase the risk of accidents. There's also the problem with turning right out of Cambridge Grove. Right now, it's a situation where you don't know if somebody's going to make a left turn or a U-turn. So we call it kind of the Russian roulette, trying to figure out if you can go or not. And at rush hour, yes, there've been a couple of times with some really close conditions there. And so this is only going to get worse. And that was one of my original concerns about the daycare.
Thank you, Mr. Peacock.
Yes, thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. John Bryan, and after that is Sassian Adade. I apologize for that. Good evening, Mr. Bryan. Please state your name and address. You have 3 minutes.
If I tell you my address, are you going to raise my taxes?
I have not raised them in the last 5 years.
Did you get my pictures?
Yes.
I passed these. These are of the Valentine site. I'm just going to read something since we have 3 minutes to keep in the box. We were provided we were provided locations of 3 sample sites of other light daycare projects so that we could get a feel for what this project would really look like boots on the ground. So we checked them out. I'll refer to them as the TKK, Still Creek, and Valentine sites. It's important to note, people associated with this proposed project indicate they are not affiliated with these 3 sites. Keisha Lineberger indicated she provided the building design only. The sites are owned by various LLCs, and we have not confirmed this claim, but we'll take her at her word. I want to make that clear. On November 12th, 2020, we had a good rain going, so I rode by the 3 sites to get a look, and oh boy, did that get my attention. Observation that day suggested the stormwater runoff systems were flooding the neighboring properties at all 3 sites. TKK and Still Creek bordered commercial and undeveloped land, so we suspect there's no one who would complain about it. A special note on Still Creek, even on non-rain days, water in the pond is present and stagnant. It appears the third party is hired to maintain the basin, and it resembles what I'd say a swamp. Last, most resembling our project was Ballantyne's site, since it's adjacent to residential homes. The rain was heavy and the retention pond was full of water, but not overflowing. I think that's an important thing to point out. It was draining a river of water on neighboring homes to the point of flood. Homes were being damaged. Just look at the pictures. I think they speak for themselves. One might argue, well, this is a once-in-a-lifetime event. This rain day did break a record, but the record preceding was only 2 years earlier. As a matter of fact, since the project was on our radar, 6 weather records, according to National Weather Service, have been set in the past few months during our research in this area. Someone else might say, John, go look at some retention ponds in your area. They're not so bad. Well, I did. I checked out retention ponds in a 5-mile radius area of my home. All that I checked were all connected to a stormwater drain system. So why are these not? How can we expect a better result with the same design? He proposes to make it bigger, and we do appreciate that, but that wasn't the problem in those photos. The problem was the amount of water it was releasing, the rate of water was releasing. Just in closing, I would say we're not against this daycare project. We just don't think it's appropriate for this particular piece of property. Just because of its unique attributes, regarding traffic, and we're on a pretty good hill. That's all.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm at 16813 Hampton Crossing.
Yeah, I have it written down, so thank you. Yes, so Sashian Odate? And I'm sorry, so please state
You
your
are very
name.
close, yeah.
My
name is Dacian Mate.
Alice Blanchard's next.
I apologize for my sports attire. I didn't think I'm gonna make it. I live in Cambridge Grove, 17210 Cambridge Grove Drive for the last 5 years. I'm also a member of the HOA board. Also have 3 girls with 3 different buses, going to 3 different schools. That's the reason I moved there. I know we did a survey, came back in Cambridge Grove and Hampton Ridge when first we heard about it. 80% came that they are against of rezoning it. Main concern was traffic. Another concern was the buffer, you know, that the noise and that will bring. Lots of people, they live on street. They are close to AAA and, you know, all the other commercials. Even today, they promise like a 60-feet buffer, and they still hear all the noise every morning. And they said the property value went down because of that. So people living behind this, they have the same fear that the property value is going to go down because of all the what's going on in the backyard. Another concern, like people said, cutting the traffic, but that's the main concern was on the top of the, you know, on the list. Even the people that are going to Caldwell Station and Cambridge Grove, they go on Cambridge Grove. So they are cutting through Cambridge Grove. That street actually is not only for the people that live in Cambridge Grove, they are for the neighborhoods they live. Instead of going around on 115, they cut through our neighborhood. So that stops. If you wait in the morning with the bus, for the bus with the kids, you will see the kids running like 7 o'clock, 6:30, 8, doesn't matter because they are different schools. The kids are running wild, and the people are rushing through that stop sign in front of the pool. Like Cambridge Grove does not have any other place where the people can go, like Green Place. That's the only spot is just behind this daycare. Going from Cambridge Grove, going right on Glencrest. That's the only spot where the kids are playing, going with the bikes. That's where they gather. So when you have increasing that amount of traffic go that way, that's a big concern. That's pretty much what I had in a very short notice. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Miss Alice Blanchard, and then Debbie Stone, I'm sorry. Good evening.
Good
Please state
evening.
your name and address. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Alice Blanchard. I live at 16904 Taft Court, Huntersville, which is off of Cambridge Grove. I love children, as I know most of us here do. But I am here to tell you that the number of school buses that use that intersection at Sanford and Cambridge Grove is tremendous. And I think you just have to be at the stop sign there about 7:30 in the morning to realize how many children are pouring out of the homes to get to the school buses in a hurry, and they're running and carrying on because they've got business to do. That there's just too many children there to think about adding more traffic and cut-throughs, and parents that are dropping kids off in a hurry. I would just like to mention that in the summertime, the children play all over the place, and it's a wonderful neighborhood for children. Bicycles, moms pushing strollers, kids playing games, it would just degenerate the quality of the neighborhood that we see every day. I moved here 10 years ago. I like this area. I moved here because of that neighborhood, and I'd really like to see that it is maintained. I think a preschool or a daycare center is a wonderful thing too. There are better places to choose. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Miss Debbie Stern or Stone, and then James Wathany. No, I apologize. Is Miss Stone here or Stern?
Starnes, Debbie Starnes.
Starnes? We outlasted her. Next would be James, Gwaltney.
Everything's pronounced. Won't be.
Okay, sorry about that. And then, well, you know, y'all aren't, penmanship is not so great today.
Oh, come on, man.
Next is Carolyn, K-O-N something. Please state your name and address. You have 3
I'm
minutes.
James Gwaltney. I live at 10102 Grimsby Court, just down the road from the main road. And I have children, and I'm against this development purely because the location's just not right for this particular development. I don't know about you, but I live with commercial real estate in my backyard. The things that I really don't enjoy are the fact that I have loud noises at 6 a.m. in the morning. It wastes my pregnant wife, it wastes my dogs, it wastes my daughter. My day gets started an hour early. It's not fun. At night, we have headlights in our living room. We do not enjoy that while we're watching Game of Thrones, okay? And not to mention the fact that cars, these performance cars, they use these parking lots for revving their engines, testing out their tires. They do it in the middle of the night in my backyard. I hear it clearly, and it wakes my daughter up. It does not prove to be a very conducive environment for my family. Not to mention the fact that I'm exposed in my backyard because I have commercial real estate. If I were to get robbed, that would be an ideal opportunity. Park the car behind the house, break in the backside, go out the backside. It's not good. Traffic, if you look at the picture that's actually on the TV, 100 cars try to U-turn right there in the bottom left-hand corner. If you look at that driveway on the right-hand side, what you don't see is you can't turn left into Hampton. So you have to turn around, or you have to go through our neighborhood and loop back. Now, we already have all the traffic from 73. All 800 houses or residents in that neighborhood have to make that left-hand turn right there. It's on a hill that you can't see. Where the Hampton Ridge Street is, there's a hill. There's a peak of a hill right there. So when you turn to go right, you have to look up the hill into the sun. That's not fun either. And then you're going to have kids right there. That's ridiculous. The safety concerns are out of whack. Not to mention the fact right behind this facility is all of our HOA. So that's our tennis courts, our pool, everything else. How are we going to prevent abuse of that particular street and all of our facilities back there? We have playgrounds. We have stuff that my daughter plays on. It's going to wear it out early because I'm sure that when parents don't arrive on time, they're going to walk right down there and go down to our playground. Now, I'm not against sharing, but somebody's got to pay for it. So, just to be clear, I have children. I would not send them there, and I don't think that that location is a good idea for this particular community. I think that is grossly underestimated just how impactful that particular facility is going to be for our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Carolyn, K-O-N something, and then Sandy Denenzio.
I've been in Cambridge Grove for 26 years. I raised 3 children there.
So please state your name and address.
I am at 10113 Truett Court. So, right where they're talking about doing the little cut through, that would be on mine. No, I have not met anybody that's doing it, nor have they been to my house, nor did they say anything, nor from the Planning Commission. As far as the noise goes, when they put the AAA over there, we begged you all not to. Oh, we've got it. We've got it in hand. We have No, you don't. It starts at 5:30 in the morning. And when they pick up the garbage and stuff, it's big clangs and everything. That's just the noise. The other thing I noticed was the need. When Sonia Curry developed the daycare and Montessori school, my daughter was going to it. And it's on 33 acres. And I can tell you, I just Googled, and there are 15 daycares within 3 miles of my home. So 3 miles of that school. There are 11 Montessori schools, in addition to the 15 daycare. So in this particular area, we already have a lot of daycare. Traffic's a big thing. They've built Amazon on the other end. 73 is the only cut through from 85 to 77. It is only going to get worse. And there has not been any studies because of COVID in at least almost 2 years. And that's when they built Amazon and everything there. You have the 18-wheelers that come across because there are several trucking firms and delivery firms that are on the other end that cut through. That is why Ryan died. The child had a name. His name was Ryan. He was my son's best friend. There were over 15 kids at that bus stop the morning that he was crushed by pipes that everybody told us, oh, that bus stop is just fine. Please don't do that. You're going to kill a kid. Oh, no, we've got this. Trust us. We did. Ryan died. He would be 37 years old this year. He didn't make it. He died at 12. I've mentioned the noise, the buffer area. I would like to know how I can request an increase in the buffer areas for this particular property. Because instead of 25, I would like to be 30 or 35. The limited zoning, it doesn't say on there that it is only limited to daycare. And that if it changes from daycare, then it reverts to residential. So I would like for that to be stipulated, because from what I've seen of these, they get it in and it's for the children. Anytime a politician tells me anything is for the children, I automatically know I don't trust them. So if they're putting this in for the children, I want it in writing so that it doesn't get flipped. In her presentation, she's already talking, it's a school. It's not an infant care site. It is a school. You're going to have children that are going to slide out of somebody's hand at some point, and they are either going to end up in the middle of 73 crushed by a truck, or they're going to end up in Cambridge Grove getting in the street, or that back area. Our division is already a cut-through. That's how it was designed, because anybody coming up has to turn around. They turn around in that little loop right there.
Thank you.
So,
Our next speaker is Miss Sandy Denzio, and then Michaela Powell. Good evening.
Good
Please state
evening.
your name and address. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Sandy Denzio. I own 10021 Glencrest Drive and the adjacent lot. I am a professional engineer by trade. I began just reviewing the codes tonight. I'd like to say that, I'm confident that Huntersville zoning was intentional. It prevents spalling and spot zoning to ensure property values are maintained and traffic control and traffic calming measures are accomplished. So I urge the board to respect the zoning as it was designed. To start, I have a few points I'd like to make. As I was reviewing HC, it states that Highway Commercial District will not only serve the Huntersville community, but interstate travelers as well. Policy LU 6.3 that the engineer brought up this evening, he talked about small scale developments. Those are to be neighborhood serving, not to be interstate travelers serving. So there's a clear conflict there between HC and LU 6.3. As far as stormwater management, I'm taking a look at the size of that pond. Think about who's going to maintain that pond when sediment goes into it. Who's going to go and make that pond be dug out? Also, I'm not seeing any infiltration. Infiltration is necessary to keep our groundwater table where it needs to be. I don't see best management practices. All I see is a pond there. That is not recommended stormwater management. That's a last resort. We need to be more creative. Additionally, the traffic counts that the engineer stated would be done, they must take into consideration COVID. Right now, there's many people are working at home in that 800 home development. So there's going to be less traffic counts, or lower numbers in the traffic counts. So please be aware of this when you call the traffic count. There's got to be an adjustment for that. I respectfully disagree that if the staff encourages people to not cut through, then Mr. Brad can support this development. That is not an engineered solution. Having staff at a daycare be expected to tell people, oh, don't cut through. It's going to happen. One final thing that I wanted to mention, I know it was stated that we will stipulate that this will always be a daycare. I don't know the legality behind that. As I mentioned, I am a professional engineer. I'm registered in Pennsylvania. I just recently moved into this development and into North Carolina. But what I did see was permitted uses for HC include nightclubs, music clubs, with conditions adult establishments, commercial uses, vehicle and boat repair, halfway houses. I mean, there are multiple different things. And once you say this is HC, it's going to be harder the next time somebody comes in and says, I want to rezone that for a girly bar. So I just want to make you aware that you should be paying attention to those things. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. Michaela Powell? Was that for the girly bar? All right, Ms. Powell.
Hi.
Please state your name and address. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
My name is Michaela Perez Powell, and I live on 10436 Blackstock Road in Hampton Ridge. At this point, I'm going to reiterate what my fellow neighbors have already said, but I am proud to say that in June of 2020, I became a first-time homeowner. The primary reason why we chose to buy a home in Hampton Ridge is because of the overall sense of community and how family-oriented and quiet the surrounding neighborhoods are, something that I was never able to witness as a child being raised in New York City. Children, parents, and residents walking dogs often frequent the streets, which is why I love where I live. I genuinely feel safe. However, unfortunately, with the proposed daycare in place, the community feel will certainly be lessened dramatically through increased cut-through traffic in the neighborhood. Along with the rise in traffic, I am concerned about the potential loss of property value by having a commercial daycare so close in proximity, along with the heightened noise levels that will be a direct result of having a large 16,000 square foot daycare housing 250 children, open until 6:30 at night. The overall safety, character, and integrity of our community will be negatively affected by this rezoning, and for this reason, I am not in favor of it being approved. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We have no other speakers that have signed up. Do we have any questions of staff? Okay. All right, Commissioner Hines, or the applicant.
Got a couple questions, and I don't know if this is for planning or if this is for Mr. Roberts. When I lived on Hampton Trace, connectivity is a big thing. We've always wanted to connect subdivisions, keep cars off the major thoroughfares. When I lived on Hampton Trace, there were 2 barricades at both ends. Caldwell Station was approved, opened up, connected Hampton Ridge, Cambridge Grove to Caldwell Station. One of the concerns I had at the time, I think that was, I may have been on the planning board, this is a long time ago. When Caldwell Station was approved, on Caldwell Station, at one point on Bailey Road, there's going to be an industrial park or some type of business. That Caldwell Station would be connected over to Bailey Road through connectivity. One of the big issues with that is there's a big creek. It's called Caldwell Station Creek. Is there any plans, whether in Cornelius's TIP to make that connection? Because we heard tonight, a lot of that traffic funnels down through Hampton Ridge, Cambridge Grove. Knew it probably happened because otherwise their access is off of Old Statesville. Is there any plans in Cornelius, and who's going to put that bridge in to connect Caldwell Station to Bailey Road? And that, for everybody, that would come out about where 11 Lakes Brewery is.
I do not have that information. Stephen, do you know any?
Yep, it was eliminated back when I was in Cornelius towards the, probably 5 years ago. I don't know if they've re-added it back on the CIP, so I'm not sure.
Doesn't help our connectivity with our neighbors to the north. Now, one question for Ms. Luke. Somebody brought up spot zoning. If this were rezoned to this use, would this be, in your opinion, considered spot zoning or not?
So this is a conditional rezoning, and conditional rezoning technically is spot zoning. It is not illegal in North Carolina, but it still can't be arbitrary and capricious. So when you made your determination regarding the legislative decision, you would have to go through a consistency analysis as well as a reasonableness analysis. And there are several factors that you would want to consider. And one of those factors is, well, what is the difference between what would be allowed in the proposed rezoning versus what is allowed in the current rezoning? And one thing that was brought up is that schools are already allowed in the zoning that is in place as it is. So those are some things that you would look at. You would also look at things like the overall consistency with the plan, which we have discussed. And I think Brad, you know, he went over what is consistent, what is inconsistent, what changes could be made to make it more consistent. Those are all things that would be considered in that analysis. So you would really have to look at various factors. Overall, it's a totality of the circumstances determination. And based on what's currently allowed, the school being one of them, the court would likely favor saying that it's not spot zoning because of the consistency in the two proposed. The consistency in what is allowed versus what is proposed.
Okay. And one last question, I'll make sure my board members, I have a lot of questions, but Mr. Priest, I think the applicant made a comment or reference that they purchase state-approved curriculum for daycare. And earlier on, our staff's indication is if you have curriculum for a preschool, then we consider you a school. So why would this type of facility not be considered a school if they're purchasing state-approved curriculum?
Well, as far as curriculum is concerned in regard to state requirements for education, I don't think that's the same thing. So that's the first I've heard of the curriculum being purchased. In the totality of what's being taught for preschool, in regard to, again, a 3-month-old, and the supervisory role that daycares have and the hours in a totality, big picture, I think staff would still incline that that's a daycare use as opposed to a school. But it's possible that one checkbox might be met with an education type curriculum for a certain aspect of children, an age group of children, but not others.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Munger?
My question was answered, thank you.
Commissioner Boone?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask Ms. Lineberger a question about the photos. I think it was Barry Jackson that gave us these.
No, Mr. Brown.
Okay. Are these, have you seen these?
I have seen those. That is not my site. Topography is completely different on every property. I did see that. And we actually got together the night of that rain that it poured.
There's 3 different properties, and you're saying all 3 are not any?
All 3, I sold a copy of the business model and was not a vested owner in any of those 3 properties.
Okay, so you have nothing to do with these
I
properties?
don't, and the property and topography is completely different on every single property. So that property is completely different than the topography of this property, which the water retention and things of that sort are going to be completely unique to every single property.
Okay, thank you.
No other questions?
Not at this time.
Okay. I do have one comment. My understanding by count, there are at least 3 HOA members from Cambridge Grove here tonight. We have a back room over there, so if you have time, you can chat together. I think at least talking instead of just emailing might be a good idea. I don't think there are any other questions.
Mayor, I want to give you some clarity on Brian's question. It's in Cornelius's future year CIP, so no timeline. That connection.
All right. And Commissioner Phillips?
Yeah.
Oh.
I just, for Brad, how many apartments could fit legally on that piece of land?
How many apartments could fit on the subject property?
Yes, on this site, how many apartments?
Oh, well, I mean, as it's currently zoned, no apartments would be permitted under general residential. If hypothetically it was rezoned to neighborhood residential, it would vary. It would vary depending upon if they can get all the requirements of the ordinance in. They'd be limited to 3 stories. Can they get the parking in that's required? So I couldn't give an exact answer on how many apartments, but again, if it was rezoned to NR, going through this process that we're going through right now, they could have a 3-story building, apartment building. How many units, I just don't know at this point.
And I was wondering, is there the daycare, preschool, what's a school? Is there any way we could get a professional to give an opinion on that instead of everybody assuming? Because I feel like every person we're going more on feelings than facts, and I don't feel like that's appropriate in something like this.
Well, I mean, the ordinance gives the planning department that responsibility to make determinations based on information submitted by the applicants, and then make a zoning administrator determination between different uses. And so that was the exercise that was done in that matter. And so from what the information has been submitted to staff, the determination was made it was a daycare. Now, but we'd be happy to further consider that information. But again, with the information considered in past circumstances and going through this exercise several times, it was seen that this was a daycare application.
But the whole saying a daycare isn't a school situation, I feel like it's something I'm uncomfortable with that we're proceeding with right now. Because if there's a curriculum to me that's more school-based than just dropping your kids off for playtime for the day and a babysitter. So if we could find like black and white clarification on that and not opinions, I don't know how we go about doing that, but I feel like that would be helpful.
I can help you with that real quick. Any 5-star preschool, any North Carolina 5-star preschool is required to have a state-approved curriculum. So any...
Ms. Steinberg, can you speak to the mic?
Any North Carolina 5-star daycare preschool must have a state-approved curriculum. So in order for them to even be considered for the 5-star standards, they have to have a state curriculum. So your better schools, Primrose, Goddard, are probably 5 stars and probably have a 5-star curriculum.
So I'm sorry I'm being a pain. I promise, like, I don't want to be that person. Could we look at, like, if we've ever done any other preschool / daycare zonings here in the past and kind of go based off of that, like as a case study with the educational aspect? Because this is...
Yeah, I think going back to the aspect discussed a little bit previously, it sounds like there might be a combination element. There's a scholastic situation in regard to some students in a certain age group, but then you also have 3-month-year-olds, or 3-month-year-old children that are submitted, that are dropped off and picked up. There is no regulated schedule as far as education begins at a certain time and then they're picked up at a certain time. Parents can come and drop off and pick up at any time. So looking, it seems like there's a combination.
But they can do that at CMS too. So, I mean, we can continue this later and like get more information, but I just would like to have more information.
We can look into that and try to contact the state agencies to get some more clarification on that.
I would really appreciate that, because this is setting a precedent potentially for the future too, so.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Hines, you weren't finished?
Mr. Priest, I'm sorry, I always say a lot. I only have one more question, and then I come back and ask another one. This is for the design. So what we're looking on the screen is a very nice, pretty drawing. A couple comments or questions came up about stormwater. In your review, is the BMP or the water quality adequately addressed size-wise and those kind of things based off of what's in front of us today?
So, I am not an engineer. I like to play one on TV, but I'm not the engineer. But the ordinance requirement that Huntersville goes by, and it's been mentioned a little bit by the applicant, but essentially, the stormwater that's going to fall on the site, the ordinance requirement requires that all that water be caught and released slowly, so that the flow of water does not go off the site any faster or much faster than it already does today, fully wooded and no impervious. So that's the requirement, and the requirement is that one aspect, one 10-year storm that falls is required to be caught. So that's the requirement. The applicant has gone a little bit above and beyond to say that they are willing to upsize their pond, their sand filter, their water quality device, kind of a retention-detention combination there, and they're going to go above and beyond to a 25-year storm to catch a higher volume of water, but again, release it at a slow velocity to make sure there's not downstream issues. So our ordinance is in place to require that. To 10 years. They're going 25. And so the ordinance is in place to make sure if there is a situation downstream that there's a problem, that it's not made worse by this application. And a certain aspect to point out as well, if a residential development comes, whether it's what we discussed, single-family residential, or perhaps there's the missing middle, the duplexes, the triplex, if there's a similar amount of impervious proposed, it's the same requirements. So it's impervious based, it's not residential commercial. So to answer your question, I have my recommendation is our ordinance that we have in place would be what it needs to be to make sure that an existing situation offsite is not made worse.
So I'm going to phrase this not to be in a question, to counteract what I just said. I'm guessing that when something like this is constructed, it must be yearly maintained, things like that, that an applicant just doesn't build it and it's just a hole in the ground for the next 30 years. There's ongoing maintenance.
That's correct. So every year, once a project is finished and it's occupied, a bond has to be put in, a maintenance bond for that BMP. And every year, we have an erosion control and a BMP inspector who goes out and inspects these facilities, and if they're not operating correctly, they're required to fix it. And so if the operation is not to code, if there's a bad situation, the town has the ability to pull that bond and make sure things are fixed in the right way. I've been here for several years, and I have not heard a situation where it's been so bad that there's been flooding and so forth. Not that I can't say for sure that it hasn't been, but I have not heard that situation. So I'm confident in the ordinance requirements and our reviewers.
Thank you, Mr. Priest. I am done.
Yes, thank you. One thing that I heard tonight was the discussion around playgrounds and the use of playgrounds, and whether or not the applicant would be utilizing the HOA's playground. Is that, do you have, I'm sorry, I can't see it clearly. Is there a playground on site?
I'm actually glad that you addressed that. There is, if you look at the building, there are actually 3 playgrounds. You have a large playground, which is 3- and 4-year-old playground. The medium playground is for the 2-year-olds. The small playground is infant and pre-toddlers. Also note that they use the playground, it's staggered on the playground times. The classrooms have different times they go on the playground. There's 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon. They don't go out on orange or red days in the summer with the temperature, and we have active play space for them inside. So if it's extra cold, extra hot, or rainy, they have their active play space inside, not outside. Also, our children would not use the HOA playground for any reason. Our playground setup is about $200,000 to $225,000. If anything, I'm more concerned that neighborhood kids might want to try to play on the weekends, but we do have a full security camera setup also, which would also help with any donuts or things like that in the parking lot on the weekend.
And the other question I have for you, do you know where this is located?
That, I believe, is the Ballantyne School. It's now called Oak Crest Preparatory Academy. I think it's opened up this past month or so, and I have not talked to them. I'm not sure what they did to correct that situation.
Okay. But this is in Mecklenburg County?
It's Mecklenburg County. It's right on the line of Mecklenburg and Lancaster.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Now, I know we have somebody asking questions. This is not a Q&A time for citizens, but you can submit questions to jpearson@huntersville.org for the next 24 hours, or comments for that matter. No other questions, comments? All right, we'll close that public hearing. Thank you all for coming. Do you all need 5 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Priest, you'll have to wait 5 minutes before we get to the
Okay,
next
thank
public hearing, which I'm sure will go a lot quicker.
Here.
I'll just come over, hang out with you every day. This whole lesson.
Okay. Commissioner Boone, did he leave to go to, oh, I won't say it.
Where'd everybody go?
All right, we're going to open up the next public hearing, item 8B, conduct a public hearing on petition TA 21-04, a request by Huntersville Town Board to amend Article 7.4.2F of the Huntersville zoning ordinance to create an administrative staff review for tree mitigation plans. Mr. Priest. It's an hour till tip-off.
Well, I will put the staff report into the record. Just again, a quick background. October of last year, the town board approved TA 2001, which changed, amended the tree save mitigation requirements, clarified them. And at that meeting, the town board requested staff take a question to the HOAB, the Huntersville Ordinance Advisory Board, whether or not now that the tree save mitigation requirements were clarified, is it really necessary for those requests, the tree mitigation requests, to go to the planning board? Could they not just be done administratively? So staff took the question to the HOAB in November of 2020. They recommended that yes, with the clarification done, that staff be the sole responsibility, the entity that reviews and approves tree mitigation plans. So we came back to the town board, and the town board said, yes, staff, please initiate the text amendment application to make that happen. So that's what we're doing here. So the current process is, again, if a plan is reviewed and mitigation is required, the applicant has to go to the planning board. Staff puts in a request to be on the planning board agenda, and then has to do a staff report to assist the planning board in making that decision. So the proposed process would eliminate that public board process. Staff would review the plan, and if it meets all the requirements of the ordinance, then it would simply be approved. The draft ordinance, in order to make the change, what needed to change? Well, in Article 7.4.2F, footnote number 2, it specifically says that if approval by the planning board is granted, then mitigation is permitted. The draft language would go in and strike out that sentence on the planning board approval is granted as a requirement, and then a simple sentence at the end of that paragraph says planning staff will be responsible for reviewing and approving all tree mitigation plans consistent with the mitigation standards of this section. The recommendations, staff recommends approval. The Huntersville Ordinance Advisory Board met on April 1st and unanimously recommended approval as well. So that's my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Munger.
Thank you, Mayor. And this is really just a clarification question because it came up in the Ordinance Advisory Board. So the specific thing that this addresses is just a cleanup, allowing, taking the authority to, regarding tree mitigation from the planning board and giving it to town staff. None of the rest of the ordinance is changing at all. Everything that was needed to be modified was modified in October and passed by this board. Is that correct?
That's correct. None of the requirements for tree save are changing. None of the mitigation requirements. It's strictly process. Instead of going to the planning board, it's a staff reviewed process, but the same requirements.
That's it.
Any other questions? I'll close that public hearing. That was just a little bit quicker.
Thank you, sir.
All right, 8C, we'll open up that public hearing, conduct a public hearing on the modification to system cost components of the stormwater service charge and proposed increases to the minor system component of the stormwater service charge to be levied within Huntersville. Mr. Fox, thanks for hanging out with us tonight.
Yes, sir. Thank you guys for having me, and hopefully this one will be even faster than that one. Yep. Where am I going here? Am I going the right way?
It doesn't look like stormwater.
Yeah. Larry, help me out here. What you got?
Yeah.
We're looping.
Okay, there we go. You'll probably recognize these slides. You've seen them before. Basically, we come for you tonight with the public hearing to increase the town portion of the stormwater fees. And a quick background. Currently, our residents, even though it's technically a 4-tier system, we recognize a 2-tier system, with tier 1 being 0 to 1,999 square feet, and our tier 2 folks are actually 2,000 and above. They currently pay $1.42 on their water bill every month, and for tier 1, and tiers 2, 3, and 4 pay $2.12, and then our commercial folks pay about $36 per acre. Once again, this is impervious area, so not just the size of your house, but the size of your house, driveway, patio, all that good stuff. There's that information I just read. My slides were a little out of order here. We're proposing to increase that. Currently, the fee is between 8.4 and 3.1 1/100ths of a cent per square foot, depending on what tier you're in. So we're proposing to take the 4-tier approach and actually recognize all 4 tiers, and then commercial, so technically 5 tiers, and charge a uniform 9/100ths of a cent per square foot. That's just a lot of information on that slide, but that kind of shows where we currently are with other municipalities and unincorporated Mecklenburg County. So that's kind of my short and sweet information. Be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Commissioner Hines.
One question.
Yes, sir.
When was the last time we raised stormwater fees?
The town of Huntersville has never increased the stormwater fee since the inception of this program back in 1993, I believe it was.
Thank you.
Commissioner Phillips?
So when you speak about like the impervious area and stuff, does that also apply to bona fide farms?
I don't have that information.
You're supposed to know. You're farm people.
Yeah, I know. I do not know. I do know that there is an exception for folks that live on the lake, because their stormwater goes right to the lake, so they do have an exception for that. But I can get back with you on bona fide farms.
All right. No other questions. We'll close that public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't go away.
All right.
We'll go to other business. 9A, consider adopting resolution authorizing modification to the system cost components of the stormwater service charge to be levied in Huntersville. Mr. Fox, do you have any other comments to add?
I will say that I did not speak about in the last portion of my presentation, but if you're interested, this would increase our revenue by about $200,000 to $250,000 per year. This is a one-time increase. I know some of the municipalities that are proposing increases this year have they're going to be 4 or 5 years. They're going to look to increase theirs. Our tier 1 residents, their bill will increase by 10 cents per month. Our tier 2 residents, their bill will increase by 9 cents per month. Tier 3, which is 3,000 to 5,000 square feet of impervious, will increase by $1.19 a month. And the tier 5, which is 5,000 square feet and above, will increase by $4 per month. That's all I had to add.
Commissioner Bales?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Fox, can you explain to those watching this meeting what the revenue's going to be used for?
Yes. Basically, we're seeing, as with anything, we're seeing an increase in maintenance to our infrastructure needs. We have an aging system that we're seeing increased costs. We're also planning to invest basically invest in the environment and take on more stream restoration projects, and the additional revenue will assist us to do that. And also, Mecklenburg County actually plans over the next 4 to 5 years to increase the bill that they send us for our streets and and the impervious area controlled by the town. So this increase will also help to negate the additional expenses that will be incurred by the county.
So are you saying that the bill coming from the county is going to increase, and the revenues that we will raise through raising the fee will cover that cost in addition to our efforts?
For the time being, for the next several years it will. Over the next 5 years, the bill that the county sends us is about $150,000 per year. That is anticipated to increase to over $400,000 at the end of probably, I think it's a 5-year plan. So what we're increasing now will cover the additional county charge and give us some extra revenue to conduct projects and fix our system. At the end of that time, we'll probably have to come to you again just to cover that county portion though.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Boone?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve a resolution authorizing modification to the system cost components of the stormwater service charge to be levied in Huntersville.
Second?
That's Commissioner Bath. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, it passes. Thank you, Mr. Fox.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is 9B, consider decision on petition TA 21-02, a request to consider the repeal of Chapter 13 of the Town Zoning Ordinance, the adequate public facility ordinance, and related references contained in the zoning and subdivision ordinance. I believe that's Mr. Hill. I don't recognize him with his covert haircut, or lack thereof.
I just thought you'd like a contrast from the previous speaker. So. Anyway, what I'd like to do is just kind of go over some changes that have been made in the PowerPoint presentation compared to the public hearing that you conducted not too long ago. I think the important thing to think of in terms of the adequate public facilities ordinance is we've been going after this for more than 2 years. So I think the most significant elements here is that in early March, the public hearing was held for the text amendment, and then the planning board recommended unanimous approval of the text amendment on March 23rd. We went over the fact that there were some basic principles involved in how you correlate proposed development with the impact it would have on public facilities and how it's calculated. There are level of service thresholds, and if at any point you want me to stop on these slides, let me know, but I'm going to kind of go through them quickly. You've already seen them. The observations, I think probably the most important one is since the adoption of the ordinance, it's never really been triggered. It's never been used. We also, I think, because of the way that it is designed, it really doesn't meet the quality expectations I think that members of the Huntersville community have come to expect. So it's never resulted in denial. I think we gave several different kinds of viewpoints in terms of why it's not working and why it's not needed. But when the Ordinance Advisory Board reviewed this, one of the questions they asked was, okay, you've got 3 affected departments. What do they actually do when it comes to meeting demand for public facilities? And so we went back and we talked to the police department, fire department, parks and recreation department. They all have benchmarking, they have citizen surveys, they have national accreditation thresholds, they have state requirements that they follow, and you can see them on the slide. So again, if you have any questions, I'll go over them. We also came back and we have for you new consistency statement in terms of the staff recommendation and the planning board recommendation. There are several policies that are consistent with the idea of being able to manage public facilities properly, but pointing to the fact, I think, that we don't need the adequate public facilities ordinance. And I think the big difference is that the 2040 plan is proactive and the ordinance itself that we have is reactive, and we really prefer the proactive approach. So the staff recommendation was to adopt the two draft ordinances that are part of text amendment TA 2102. One affects the zoning ordinance, the other affects the subdivision ordinance, and that we did find that there was some consistency with several 2040 plan policies. The planning board provided the motion or the actual consistency statement you see on the screen. You have the option of approval or denial, but at this point I'll stop and see if you have any questions.
Commissioner Boone?
Thank you, Dave. I'd like to go ahead and make a motion in considering the proposed text amendment TA 21-02, repealing Article 13 and amending Article 11 of the zoning ordinance and amending Section 6 of the subdivision ordinance. The town board approval is based on the amendment being consistent with the 2040 plan, policy PS1, PS3, PS4, PS8, EOS 8.1, and EOS 10. It is reasonable and in the public interest to approve TA 21-02 because the town's needs are adequate publicly facilities are met through other government and budgetary process, so the APFO is redundant and unnecessary burden on limited resources.
Second. Commissioner Hines? Any further discussion? All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, the motion passes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bales?
Yes? Oh, yes, it is that time. I would like to ask the board to recuse me from this next item, 9C. The road work is being done in front of my home if this is passed.
Motion to recuse Commissioner Bales.
Second. Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? All right, we'll see you in a few. Is Ms. Mastrofinchesco in here? Come on. Or unless I have a motion. Commissioner Boone?
You need to read something into the record? Alrighty. 9C, motion to approve to adopt a resolution of the town of Huntersville to acquire right-of-way and easement necessary for the construction of the Ransom Road project.
Second.
Commissioner Hines, any discussion? All those in favor? All right.
Did anybody ask Commissioner Bales if she's going to donate her property?
Motion to invite Ms. Bales back.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? I didn't have to break the tie. Okay. Next item is 9D, consider decision on an ordinance to amend Chapter 33 of the Huntersville Code of Ordinances entitled Emergency Management. Ms. Sloop, how are you?
I'm doing well. I hope you all are. I'm happy to answer any questions about the amendment.
Commissioner Munger?
Sure. Section 1C, at the end of the sentence, it says, or at the direction of the board. Just to clarify, does this mean that if a majority of the board votes to end or not to end a declared state of emergency, that decision is enforceable?
Yes.
That's what.
Commissioner Bales?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a motion to approve an ordinance to amend Chapter 33 of the Huntersville Code of Ordinances entitled Emergency Management.
Second.
Commissioner Phillips? Any further discussion? All those in favor? All right. Approved, 5-0. Then 9E, Ms. Sloop, consider adopting policy on public comment periods and public hearings.
I'd like to make a motion on that. I'd like to make a motion to defer action on adopting a policy on public comment periods and public hearings until April 19th, 2021 meeting.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion, Commissioner Boone?
Yes, I'd like to ask the Commissioner, why are we delaying this? Is there some questions or some clarity we need to work out?
So, In our earlier 3-on-3 meetings, I had suggested one amendment, and then I put together that amendment, sent it out to the board members. One other commissioner, Commissioner Walsh, who's not present tonight, asked for a slight modification to that. I started preparing that to submit to our town attorney, and then I received an email from you indicating another possible change. So it felt very much like things were in flux, and we hadn't fully flushed out what that should look like. So I would like us to take 2 weeks to continue that conversation and get it right the first time.
Okay. Do you second that?
Yeah, and I also think with Walsh not being here, if we're gonna make a big decision like this, that's impacting how we speak and the citizens speak, we need to do it as a full board.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in deferring item 9E to April 19th? All those opposed? Nope. All right, consider 9F, consider approval of revised fund balance policy. I wish I could make this motion. Anybody else have a motion? Commissioner Munger?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve a revised fund balance policy for our general fund balance to maintain an unallocated fund balance to be used for unanticipated emergencies of 40% instead of the current 45%.
Second.
Commissioner Boone? Any further discussion? All those in favor? All right. 5-0. All right. 9G, which is consider adopting a resolution opposing the postponement of the 2021 Huntersville municipal election. Commissioner Phillips took the lead on this, so I appreciate that. But for some reason, she's asking me to talk about it. So I'll read this. A resolution opposing the postponement of the 2021 Huntersville municipal election. Whereas the Board of Commissioners of the Town of Huntersville supports keeping with the tradition of fair election process, whereas the Board of Commissioners of the Town of Huntersville supports holding our municipal election on the scheduled date of November 2nd, 2021, and whereas pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 163-279, primaries and elections for offices filled by election of the people in the cities, towns, incorporated villages, and special districts shall be held in 1973 and every 2 or 4 years thereafter as provided by municipal charter. Whereas Section 3.1 of the Town of Huntersville Charter requires regular municipal elections be held in each odd-numbered year in accordance with the uniform municipal election laws of North Carolina. Elections shall be conducted and the mayor and the board members elected on a nonpartisan basis according to the nonpartisan plurality method authorized by GS 163-292. Whereas Huntersville's municipal government consists of 6 at-large town commissioner seats and a mayor, census data will not affect the makeup of our current board. The impending census data impacts only 62 of 550 municipalities in North Carolina. Huntersville is not included in the 62 impacted, and it is unjust that a minority of municipalities who rely on census data would dictate the election process for our town. And whereas postponing the Huntersville municipal election by 1 year is a disservice to our citizens, citizens were guaranteed 2 years of service by the current board and then a new election that would be navigated by the will of the people, and additional year to the terms we are currently serving is not adhering to the spirit of government of the people, by the people, for the people. Now therefore be it resolved that the Town of Huntersville Board of Commissioners requests the Huntersville municipal election for commissioners and mayor remain on schedule for November 2nd, 2021, as it is in the best interests of our town and our residents, and also Nancy Annarella. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? And I believe it's the intent of the whole board to sign this, including myself. Is that what you all decided?
Yes.
Okay. All right, all those in favor? And seeing none opposed, we'll look forward to those November 2nd elections. All right, final item on our agenda is 9H. accept streets in the Marabella subdivision for town maintenance. Mr. Fox is back. Is there a question, a motion?
Yes,
Commissioner Bone?
I think we all received an email over the weekend from a citizen who lives in this subdivision, and he had some concerns with additional development of Phase 3 or 4 of Marabellum, and who's going to take over the responsibility of the roads, and who'll be responsible for the damage during the construction. So, Mr. Fox, if you could just enlighten everybody, that'd be great.
Sure, be happy to. I'll start off by saying this is certainly not anything that's new to Marabella or new to us in Huntersville. Nearly every subdivision that we've, we generally see them grow out from the beginning to the back. Over the years, we've tried to tackle it several different ways to make sure that we were holding the developer responsible for damages that were done to previous phases by building in the back. All of those have been met by resistance, and basically they have found it unlawful for us to bond, to include anything on a bond outside of what's exactly on that particular map. So in other words, if I have the entrances on a map and then a phase in the back, I can't hold anything over the developer's head for something outside of this particular map. We have tried several different avenues as far as getting bonds for entrance routes or stuff like that, to no avail. So it has been our practice, and we find that it actually is in the best interest of the homeowners associations to go ahead and accept those streets when the developers have met the requirements.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Bales?
So just a quick question in regards, if we're taking these streets on,
Yes, ma'am.
are you then, is staff working with the developer on that the new phase to make sure that they're not damaging all of these streets in here, that they've got a direct path in and a direct path out, so that at least we're minimizing the damage?
That's correct, and we haven't done that yet with this subdivision. With previous subdivisions, we did go, make sure that we designated a specific construction route so that we were localizing that damage instead of being broad throughout the whole subdivision.
Okay, thank you.
Need a motion, right? Yep. I'd like to make a motion to accept the streets in Marabella subdivision for town maintenance.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? All right. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fox. Any closing comments before we go into closed session?
Consent.
Oh, sorry.
Second.
Motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second? Second. Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? All right. Now, any closing comments before we go into closed session and also recuse?
I got one, Jack. During the public hearing about the daycare center, I think it was Mr. Waltney made a mention of the noise at the AAA auto manufacturing. And I think when we approved that 8 or 9 years ago, they had to put up a fence that opened and closed with the same store hours. And do we have any code enforcement that looks into that?
We haven't received any complaints on that. We had when they first opened over a couple of years, and we went out and enforced the ordinance. Hadn't heard a complaint since then. Sounded to me like there might be some issues with trash pickup early in the morning, which the town does have a noise ordinance, and you're not supposed to be picking up trash. I think it's 7 o'clock. I don't know the exact time. So there might be an issue there, but we have not had any complaints at all on that particular site.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification.
Any other closing comments? Nope. I just have one. I forgot to mention that the mayor's luncheon this month is April 20th, 11:45 to 1 o'clock. Ryan McDaniels will be my guest speaker. Commissioner Bales?
I'd like to make a motion that we go into closed session.
Well, I don't believe you're going to be, so I'm
that.
looking for...
Once we go in to closed
We
session.
need a motion to go into closed session.
Yes, first.
Okay, all right.
I'd like to make a motion to go into closed session.
It's been done.
No, you got to put the GS.
That's okay.
Motion to go into closed session to discuss property acquisition pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11 and A5.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Bales, any discussion? All those in favor? All right, we'll be back.
Can we just go in the quorums? Right? I mean, at this point, no one's here.
Would we have to come back? Do we have to come back?